This course is designed with several exegetical exercises that will help you hone your skill at being able to open God's Word and then correctly interpret it, consume it, and then teach it to others. The first one has to do with a very basic skill, exegetical exercise 1, recognizing boundaries. You'll see displayed before you the syllabus, open to pages 9 and 10. What we're looking for in exegetical exercise 1, recognizing boundaries of a passage, is to make sure we have buttoned down the skill of understanding where a passage begins and where the passage ends. The concept is fairly fundamental. The idea is that when people communicate, they communicate in understandable units of thought. If we are to receive that communication and correctly understand it, we want to respect the units of thought with which it has been composed. Imagine, for example, receiving a letter from someone in distress. And if you were to read that letter and only excerpt perhaps the 4th and 7th sentence of a 10-sentence letter, why, ignoring the surrounding material, you'd be liable to misunderstand it. Rather, we need to take the whole letter as an entirety. Now, when we're interpreting part of the Bible, we cannot get our heads around the entire book of the Bible or the entire a larger section. So what we do is we break it down into smaller sections, but sections that are still discrete passages. The way that you will show your ability to respect the boundaries of the passage is by the following steps. Notice the column that's entitled Specific Instructions. Read over these instructions, and then you can move on to the example passage where you can see this assignment carried out in summary fashion for the passage Genesis 22. The 3 elements of the assignment that will show you understand this skill are, first of all, to give a summary, a brief summary of the content of the focal passage. Focal passage for the example is Genesis 22. You'll be applying it to the passage Exodus 15, the verses spanning 22 through 27. So begin by summarizing the content as if you were to complete the sentence, "This passage is about," and then fill it in. The next step you'll take is to show that you can appreciate that the content that you've just summarized is different from what comes before. How do you do that? Simply complete the sentence. Preceding material is about, and then fill it in. By the way, you'll need to indicate what the preceding material is. That is to say, what chapter, what verses you're referring to. Typically, we'd look to one paragraph or a couple of paragraphs prior to the target material, the focal passage. Summarize that. Then you'll exercise that same summary and distinction skill with the succeeding material. Let's see what that looks like for Genesis. If the focal passage is Genesis 22, notice what is the summary. Genesis 22 is about the near sacrifice of Isaac. Okay, that's the topic. That's what it's concerned with. Preceding material. In this case, for preceding material, we're only reaching back, looks like about 13 verses. The previous block spans 22 to 34, and we indicate that that's an independent, a separate block, by telling what's the content of it. This is about Abraham making a covenant with another individual by the name of Abimelech. We can clearly see that Isaac's not a major player in this. The near sacrifice of Isaac is not a major activity in the preceding material. It is different. Next, we want to demonstrate that the end of Genesis 22, since that's the focal passage, the end of Genesis 22 is a legitimate ending. In other words, the near sacrifice of Isaac does not spill into Genesis 23. It really is contained within Genesis 22 and the ending verses there. How we do that is by paying attention, reading ahead beyond Genesis 22. And here we discover that Isaac's near sacrifice really stops not at the end of chapter 22, but at verse 29. Verse 19 within 22. That is to say, there are a few verses within chapter 22 which change topic. So we have this other content dealing with Nahor's children, and that spans chapter 22, verse 20 through 24. Consequently, we would more accurately limit the topic of the near sacrifice of Isaac, beginning with Genesis 22, verse 1, and then ending in 19. So the new lower boundary should really begin in 22:20. That would be the opening of a separate topic, a separate block of content. Once again, you'll be focusing on Exodus 15, 22 to 27. Begin by summarizing it. And then look to verses preceding. Figure out what verses you feel constitute a separate topic. Identify the span. Tell what is the topic there and how is that different from 22 to 27. And then do the same thing with verses after 27. Choose a block of verses that constitute a separate topic. Label the topic and point out how it's different than 22 to 27. One of the skills that we want to be sure we're committed to is doing our own work and not depending on what editors of the Bible have used as paragraph divisions or inserting subtitles to help us recognize content. Don't depend on that. Do your own thinking. Most of the time, what the editors have done will be fine and helpful, but there will be times when freeing ourselves, standing apart from the headings and paragraph divisions inserted by editors will be very important. Incidentally, it's not limited to paragraph divisions and headings. It's even chapter divisions. So, demonstrate that you've mastered this skill by completing this assignment. It's not one where you need a bibliography. You shouldn't even need to go to any outside resources. You should be able to distinguish this just by carefully reading and thinking over the content. Incidentally, if in an assignment like this you examine the beginning verse and the ending verse and you feel those are not legitimate beginning points or ending points, feel free to reconfigure it. Just make a case for it using the logic that's outlined in this assignment. As you can see, you should be able to complete this assignment within about half a page, at most one page, double-spaced.